Welcome back. Good Tuesday morning, everybody. Thanks so much for joining us this morning. I'm Maria Bartiromo, and it is Tuesday, July 15th. It is 7:02 on the East Coast. Americans can now use their rent payments and their crypto assets to help them qualify for a mortgage. That's under a new order from Federal Housing Finance Agency Director Bill Pulte, who heads up Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. The order is leveraging Vantage Score credit ratings, taking rent payment history into account, instead of just the traditional FICO credit score. Joining me now is the man himself, FHFA Director Bill Pulte. Bill, thanks very much for being here. This is big news. How does it work?
Huge news. Well, President Trump signed this law into law in 2018, Maria. But go figure, Biden didn't do a damn thing about it. We came into office, and under President Trump's leadership, we executed on that legislation that Tim Scott led in 2018. And now Americans can qualify for a mortgage very shortly with their rent and with many other things. And frankly, in many ways, it's been shown that rent payments are actually more predictive than traditional ways that have been done. Now, some people like FICO have been upset and whatnot. I don't care. I care about the American people. We care about making the right decisions. We're going to follow the law. That's what we did. And this is going to be a huge boom for the American people. This is going to be very helpful for getting the American dream. So
I've got rent. I pay my rent on time every month. That will put me in better stead in terms of a mortgage application.
Well, think about it. It's just common sense, right? If somebody's been paying their rent for the last 10 years, that's highly predictive compared to some maybe, medical bill or some vehicle bill back in college that they had a hard time paying. I mean, if, somebody's a doctor and they've been paying rent for 10 years, we should be looking at that. So, look, these are all safe and sound practices. I actually think somebody said, oh, the default rate would go up. I actually think it would go down because you're getting the ability to look at more predictive things, in my opinion.
I like it. All right, let's talk about the Fed. President Trump says he would love it if the chairman, Jay Powell, resigned over him not cutting rates soon enough. And, of course, now this new story of him spending money on the buildings. Watch this.
The economy is roaring. Business confidence is soaring. Incomes are up. Prices are down. And inflation is dead. It's dead. We have a bad Fed chairman, really bad. If he would lower the rates, and I tried being nice to the guy, it doesn't help. He's like a knucklehead. No, he's a knucklehead. A stupid guy. He really is. Each point, think of this, each point costs us $360 billion.
And that's the point, Bill. The president wants rates to come down to make it cheaper to hold all this debt. We've got $37 trillion in debt. You say you're encouraged that you think Powell will step down. What specifically do you believe is the catalyst? Is it because he spent that money on a renovation at the Federal Reserve?
Well, I can't get inside of his head, but I can tell you what I'm hearing is that he's considering it. I think he should consider it. I think he should consider it very soon. And frankly, I think you have a situation, Maria, where this building is going to be the end of his career. I mean, who the heck spends $2.5 billion on a renovation? Jay Powell has become a disgrace. He's not reading the room. He's not listening to our great president. We have the greatest president in the history of the country. We have the most popular president in the history of this country. Why is Jay Powell not reading the room and also realizing that he has gross mismanagement with this building? I think, Maria, when the facts come out about this building, you will see potentially fraud and many other things that have gone on. And we can't have this stuff in the government. The American people gave President Trump a mandate. They don't want fraud. They don't want all this other nonsense. And Jay Powell doesn't seem to give a damn. And in my opinion, he needs to be held accountable.
Well, look, the chairman is now asking the inspector general to actually review the spending on the buildings. Where is the fraud, do you think?
I think it's nonsense that he's doing that. He knows it's going to take a while. He's trying to delay. Who knows who this inspector general is, right? This just gets back to Jay Powell. He's very, in my opinion, very deceitful. And I think you've seen that through his actions. I mean, look, if the president comes to you and says, hey, I would like you to do something in terms of if it's in following the law and if, he's the president of the United States and you're Jay Powell and he says, hey, I'd like for you to go. Why would you want to stay in that job? It just doesn't make any sense. The American people don't want it. I'll tell you this, Maria, the people on the internet and the base and, frankly, people from the other side want him gone.
Well, look, his term ends in May. We don't know who the president would like to appoint in the position. But, of course, an opening on the Fed is happening in January. One of the governors will be leaving. So that's one opening in January. And then the chairman's position Powell's term ends in May. We don't know if President Trump's going to put in there Kevin Warsh or Kevin Hassett, but I spoke with Kevin Warsh, former governor, on Sunday, and asked him about the Fed's policy right now. Watch this. Look what just happened. The tariffs actually brought in $27 billion for the month, customs duties. You're talking about $100 billion on an annualized basis for tariffs, and we have a budget surplus for the month of June. Should the Federal Reserve be cutting interest rates right now?
So in a word, yes. Maria, it's quite simple. Why is it that money and financial conditions are so loose on Wall Street and considerably tighter on Main Street? Because the Fed has the policy mix exactly wrong. It has a big balance sheet like we're in the 08 crisis or the 2020 pandemic, and has rates that are too high. It needs to shrink the Fed balance sheet and cut interest rates. In so doing, Main Street can get a much lower cost of credit. First-time home buyers can find their way into houses, and the policy mix would be right. I don't know if I'm just saying that because I grew up 200 miles from here in a sort of place far from the bright lights in big city. But Main Street needs to get its break, and it's high time they do it, and the Fed can be part of that.
Bill, I'll just point out that when I asked Kevin Warsh if he would consider taking the position on the board, governor, in January, then maybe becoming chairman in May, he didn't really bite at that one. He doesn't think he needs to try out. He's going to likely expect, if the president wants him on the Fed, it'll be for chairman.
Well, President Trump has the best instincts. He has the best instincts, in my opinion, of any person that's ever lived. You just listen to his instincts, and it's like a supercomputer. It just spits it out. He'll figure out, frankly, who is the best person for this job. I'm very confident in it, and hopefully Jay Powell resigns sooner. I'm very confident he will. One thing I want to mention, Maria, is that in terms of inflation, housing and shelter, which obviously I help oversee with Fannie and Freddie, is a huge ingredient in inflation. And what happens actually when you increase interest rates is you've actually increased, believe it or not, the inflation of housing, in my view, because people don't want to build homes. Home builders aren't wanting to build right now. They're constraining supply. They're constraining inventory. And when builders constrain inventory, that limits supply, and our demand is going up. It's just basic math. So these are things that are really hurting the American people, and Jay Powell just seems completely blind to it, kind of like he was blind to this $2.5 billion building that is a mess.
Well, and also blind to all the spending on the Democrats' watch, right? What did they spend? $7 trillion, and that's why inflation shot up to 40-year highs. But, you know, Bill, I mean, the Fed can come back, Jay Powell can come back and say, look, we have a mandate. Our mandate is employment growth and inflation. And we are focused on those two things as our mandate. We're not focused on debt. But, you know, my argument is, well, you have to. It's all related. So President Trump has $36+ trillion in debt. The United States has that debt. And he's got $9 trillion rolling over this year. He wants interest rates to come down so that it's not so costly to hold that debt. We spend more on the interest on the debt than we do on defense spending, Bill. But the argument at the Fed is that's not our mandate. That's Congress's spending.
Well, even if you take his mandate that it's to reduce inflation or keep inflation to 2%, it's at 2%. I mean, in some cases, it might be lower. If you look at the run rate for the last 3 months, it's like 1.6%. So it's complete nonsense what Jay Powell is doing. He was silent during all of the so-called policy decisions that he always remains silent on. But somehow he invents and hallucinates something with tariffs. I mean, he really is hallucinating with regard to tariffs. Nobody, you know, it's like going into a room and you see a ghost. He says there's a ghost. Nobody sees the ghost except for Jerome Powell. This inflation thing with regard to tariffs is complete nonsense. It's not backed up by data. It's not backed up by math. And frankly, I think it's gross negligence. So you have that, and then you have this stuff with the building. I think the building is going to get, I think you're going to see stuff that we didn't even think before. I don't know if you saw this, Maria, real quick, but they said yesterday in their FAQ that they don't have any new or renovated dining rooms, but they have rooms for, quote, they're renovating rooms for, quote, mealtime meetings. I mean, this is the level of deceit and fraud, in my opinion, that Jay Powell is perpetrating over there, and there's no signs that he's going to stop without intervention, and so I hope Congress holds him accountable.
We'll be watching this, certainly. Good to see you. Bill Pulte joining us. Stay with us. We'll be right back.